so far away, don't you? Yeah, just move the, yeah. I'm probably shorter.
Okay, we're gonna go with the next group of people. Jason, I have no idea who this person is, and he's never responded to me. So I don't know what to tell you, where he's at or what he's doing, but he's not here. Spar. He's never responded back, and I've texted him and et cetera, so.
He said he wouldn't be here tonight.
Who?
Jason.
Not to me.
Well, no, I said on Facebook, he made a comment, he would not be here tonight.
He would know. Okay, well, that's the place to put it. Okay, I don't know why, I have no idea, but, he's not here. So we're gonna go with the three that are here, and Anthony, you had a different name you wanted to be called, correct? Tony? Or?
Anthony or Tony, either.
Okay.
I go by anything, so
Okay, so we're gonna go anything.
I'll answer to that.
Okay, good. Again, go to vote411.org and see what these, and include him, I do believe he's answered that.
What if someone hasn't answered? What if they don't have an answer?
Either they'll answer, or they have nothing for you to read, and that's a decision you have to make. I know what my decision would be. But that's fine. So we'll start with the 2 minutes to tell us about themselves, and then a minute per question. They will not be the exact same questions, and then a minute and a half to wrap up. Okay, you've all done this before, so do you have any questions? You three? None? Okay, all right, let's start with, I'm calling you Tony because I think Anthony sounds so formal.
That's fine.
So, Tony. Our
We're
timer's
starting
still
with-
there.
Okay, well, first of all, like everybody else, thank the league for putting this together. It's always exciting to come in, a little nerve-wracking to voice your things. A little about myself. I was not born and raised in Roy. I'm a Southern Utah boy by upbringing. I grew up camping and hiking in Southern Utah, but I've lived in Roy ever since I claimed to maybe be an adult. I've lived here for about 26 years. I've taught at Roy High School for 25 years. Also other things, I've taught for Weber State University. I teach mathematics and statistics. That's my education. That's a lot of my attitude. So a lot of what I bring to the table deals with, what does the data say? What are the numbers? I'm very numbers and data driven. I have a hard time answering questions based upon just my opinion if I don't have some numbers in front of me to back it up. I have 3 boys. My oldest is attending Utah State. My other 2 are at Roy High School currently. And I think one of the biggest things Roy needs right now is a teacher, somebody to engage the community and change the aspect that we have very low participation in voter turnout, in attendance at city councils. And I think the primary reason of that is people just don't know. How many of the candidates have you asked have knocked on the door and other things and people say, oh, there's an election? Really? I didn't even know. Or how'd the election go? How'd you end up? Did you win? And we're like, no, that was just a primary. There's one more hoop that we have to go through and you can either go against me or for me there. I love the people of Roy. I'm not angry about anything. I don't have any axes to grind. I want to see things improve. And that's my big shield.
Janelle.
Testing.
Hi, my name is Janelle Holbert. I am a mother of 4. I have 2 girls and 2 boys. My 2 oldest go to Roy High. My 2 youngest go to Valley View Elementary right now. And we've lived in Roy about 15 years. My husband works at Hill Air Force Base. That's what brought us here. And we have thoroughly enjoyed living in Roy. I grew up in a small, tiny town. I farmed from a farming family. My dad farmed and worked at the sugar factory as well, and my mom worked at a dental office and was a bit of an entrepreneur. And I just want to say that that small town feel, I feel a lot of that same thing here in Roy, and I love that. One thing that, some of the things I'm looking forward to in Roy or that I want to implement is smart and responsible growth, guiding development while keeping Roy's welcoming hometown feel, fiscal responsibility, being a good steward of our tax dollars and exploring creative solutions, and stronger community connections, partnering with schools, nonprofits, businesses, and churches to make sure our households feel supported in our community. And I had an event some years back that my youngest son was left on a bus, and it took us a lot of time to figure out how to solve that problem so it wouldn't happen to other kids. And during that experience, I felt ignored by some people, and I felt like some people were listening to me, and that's what I want to be. I want to be the person that's listening to people and helping solve problems, not just ignoring or thinking someone's complaining about something. I want to be able to actually solve problems for people, and that really lit a fire in me, and that's why I'm running for Roy.
I guess I should say also, the candidates from the last one were 2-year councils. These guys are 4-year people. Diane?
Hello, I am Diane Wilson and a resident of Roy, 42 years. Thank you, Terry. This is a lot of work. Appreciate you and the league for providing this opportunity for us. Some of you may know me as Dr. Wilson, as I have practiced family medicine in Roy for 25 years. I have a very supportive husband, Leon, and he is a lifelong resident of Roy. And we have a peach orchard that we've had for 40 years. We enjoy music, and we've performed locally, regionally, and internationally. We enjoy horseback riding, camping, gardening. Service and continuing education are priorities for us. We feel very strongly about that. And I have had an opportunity to help with many boards. I've been chair or member of community boards, county boards, university, and have been very active in public service. One aspect of that is my service on the city council. I believe that is one of my key strengths, is my experience. I have served for over 4 years on the city council, and there is more to this job than meets the eye. I study extensively. I meet weekly with staff to understand city, state, and federal regulations and laws. It's amazing. You come into this thinking, wow, there are some good ideas I have, and I'm going to implement them. And then you find out there's a law, a state law, a federal law that doesn't allow you to do a lot of the things that make common sense. So that's been very interesting and taken a lot of time. City business certainly takes a priority in my life. And I'm currently Mayor Pro Tem and do spend a lot of time researching and working on city business. It is imperative, I believe, that candidates prioritize involvement in the city, and especially attending city council meetings, so they more fully understand the scope of city matters and not limit their focus to one or so areas of concern. I believe the city government should provide essential services, create an atmosphere of community.
Stop. I want someone else for a minute. Okay, we'll start with you now. I'm gonna ask you the same question that we asked before. What does controlled, sustained growth look like in your mind here in Roy?
Well, growth in Roy is inevitable, but it must be smart, balanced, and community-centered. On the Planning Commission, I've seen firsthand how complex each project can be with zoning, property rights, infrastructure, and community input at play. That's why I want us to use the general plan as our guide. It reflects the voices of our residents who contributed so much input, and it offers strong ideas like creating neighborhood identities that help us stay connected to where we live. We have so little land left to develop, we need to stay focused on the general plan. We also need to stay focused on the traffic flow and safety, making sure new development comes with improvements to roads and infrastructure that keep residents safe and moving efficiently. I know this will take extra work, but it is possible if we're willing to collaborate as a council. I'm still learning, but my time on the Planning Commission has given me valuable experience and insight into how we can do this.
You got to think, I don't want to come out and hit you with that paddle.
Or even just a little higher.
So okay, now it's on. So controlled,
Wait, we're done.
oh, I'm sorry, we're going that way.
Controlled sustained growth is certainly a challenge, and in Roy, where we're built out, we have to be a little more creative, because a lot of what our growth will be redevelopment. I think one of the keys is to remember property rights. We have property rights of the owner, and we have property rights of the nearby residents. And so we need to be consistent as possible with that. I think that increasing density, which is now legislated through the state, we know we have to do that, and it's needed, and it should be focused around transit-oriented areas and be able to focus our resources around those sorts of things. So I believe that the focus on what people are interested in and getting them involved, town halls is so important to give us that guidance so we can balance what the residents want in addition to what is mandated by the state legislature, and that will help us with controlled sustained growth and allow ownership and buy-in from our residents.
Johnny,
Thank you.
it takes it's a
Yeah,
lot.
it does take a second. Controlled sustained growth. So really, we've got a couple of kinds of growth that are happening in our city or not happening. Residential growth and business growth, and both are going to and need to happen. But they both need to be controlled, and the council should dictate and control the nature of the growth. And as Diane stated, we have property rights of owners and property rights of incomers to consider. So a lot of that's going to come from, we need to increase targeted business recruitment so we can get we need to get economic development, particularly on our 1900 corridors and our transit areas, so we can maximize the revenue we get from tax there. We need to develop codes and policies that encourage businesses to come in, also encourage property developers, both residential and commercial, to improve and beautify their properties. We also need to provide zoning and property management decisions that will provide for a pathway to home ownership.
So start with that.
All right, we'll start with Diane.
The recent tax increase will be used to balance the budget. This will not help with other repairs such as roads, etc. Name one thing that could be implemented to help the funding issue instead of property tax.
I think one of the important parts of that is using volunteer and donations. Right now, we have our fire chief in the middle of organizing a training unit, and he has done this through donations. It is amazing what we can do together and come together as citizens. We have basic fundamental responsibilities. We do need to have, by law, fire and police. But when we need some of those extra things to be able to fine tune that, one of the most important things is to come together as a community. And so if we can support that with private donations and get that, again, buy-in from the citizens, it increases our community cohesiveness, which is so important. Roy is noted for our community feel. And as we come together in these different ways, it will only increase that bond and increase the strength that we have.
Sorry, could you read that one more time?
Sure. The recent tax increase will be used to balance the budget. This will not help with other repairs such as roads, etc. Name one thing that could be implemented to help the funding issue instead of property tax.
Okay, thank you. I was listening for that one thing. I have a hard time with that because there's not just one thing. I don't think we can nail down anything that's going to cut out $1.5 million. There's not one thing. Diane mentioned increased volunteerism. It's something I brought up in the last presentation we have. We have not leveraged our community members in any level. Well, we haven't measured that. We haven't utilized our community members and organizations to the level that we could to get things done in our community. But in terms of cost, really, there's a couple of things we can do. Increase usership, increase user fees for those things that are optional services in the city. And ultimately, I think if we have to have the magnitude of property tax increase, we have to start looking at what might be able to cut back. I know the city's made lots of cuts already. They should be continuing looking at what they cut, what could they eliminate, but increase usership, increase user fees for services.
Janelle?
I think this is a difficult question because like Anthony said, there's not one thing that you could cut because it is, we do have a difficult financial situation right now. I do think though that, like he said, that we can be raising fees on things which the council has been working on. They did it for the Aquatic Center and for the Roy Rec Center. I think there's other things we can do, like I mentioned last time, that are possibly put advertisements into the rec center or things like that to bring in more revenue. And I think that also looking at volunteer opportunities, like in Roy Days, we could run a lot of that through volunteers in our community.
Okay, thank you. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing Roy right now? And what do you suggest we do about that? Not we, but you.
Thanks. Thank you. We have a lot of issues we could talk about. We can go to the elephant in the room about revenue increases. We can go to what I think is my favorite one, and I think it's the biggest increase, and that's simply knowledge not getting out to the citizens. I think as we get more knowledge to the citizens of Roy, then the people in Roy can do one of several things. They can talk to the city council members, talk to them about what they want, what they can eliminate, what they're willing to pay for services, or why they're not. If we can't pay for services, then let's not pay for them. If nobody's willing to, then let's try and drop some things. But also, excuse me, I lost my train of thought for a second. But that getting information out to people, and that's gonna happen in a lot of different ways. We already do websites, but I think there needs to be more direct community outreach where we maximize the participatory attitude that we already have in Roy.
So, hello. Okay. I love that response. I think that is very true. I think there's a lot to be said about that. Also, I think that just the blaring challenge we have right now is taxes and revenue. And I think that a lot of that falls onto business revenue. And I do have a couple ideas to hopefully help with that. I think that we need to support our businesses that we have already better. I think we need to clean up our business areas so they're more attractive to new businesses. I would love to see our business leaders meeting once a month with city leaders and other people as a networking thing. Of course, that would be up to the council to implement that. Like was mentioned earlier, we can't do things alone. You have to have the whole council on board to make things happen. And I think that those could really help support the business owners we really have so that our reputation among business owners and developers and all these other people is a good one, not a negative one.
Well, certainly the elephant in the room is the revenue, but I believe part of that will be focused or will be able to be answered if we take a look at some of the other problems which have both actually been, or which have been addressed by both of the previous candidates. I think one of the key things is the revenue comes down to what do the citizens want. In fact, it was one of the best questions we had at our Truth in Taxation. They said, maybe we do want a tax increase if we knew what we were going to lose. And that was so interesting. I was so surprised. Over half of the people said they wanted the tax increase because when they realized what they were going to lose, that's what helped them make that understanding. I believe that to be able to do that, we need that citizen interaction, citizen education, and collaboration, because then we know what they need, what they want, and what they expect. Because if they have lower expectations, then our revenue isn't as big of an issue. So collaboration amongst the council is important because as we work together and as we see what we need from the residents, we can be successful.
And all ready to use it again.
Tell me what ideas you have about making sure Roy City is a resilient city.
Oh, I like that question. I think that that's something I've really worked on building in my own children, that sometimes they fail, and that's okay, that you pick yourself back up and you try again. And I think that, you know, focusing partly on our youth will be a lot of what will make us resilient, because they are the future of our city. And I know I've met lots of people, I've been going around doing door hangers, and I've ran into people, and lots of people have family that still live here. And so there's generations of people that live in Roy. And I would hope that it kind of stays that way, that we keep some of our children here in this area. And because that does build resilience. And I think that some of the ways we can do that is through our rec programs, teaching people, you know, playing sports. That teaches kids to fail, and that it's okay to fail, and that we can do better.
Resilience in Roy, I believe, has been building for a long time. I think one of the neatest things I hear is, I'm a Roy boy, and that is absolutely amazing to me, and we need to be able to continue that. I think that community interaction is important because it builds us. I think one of the best places we have here are the grocery stores, because when we're at grocery stores, we see each other, we meet each other, we talk with each other. And traditions, when we have a tradition, it gives us that strength, that connection. It allows us to have that continued resilience. So resilience, I believe, is built on individual interactions. And so we as council and as staff, when we interact individually with people, that's also going to help, because then we have strength and we have understanding. And when we have that, hopefully we'll have more participation from our citizens as well. And that means door to door, maybe handing out flyers, maybe it's individual phone calls, but all of that brings us together.
So that really kills me. Increasing resilience to me means sticking around. And I think it starts with the youth, and I think it goes all the way to the end. And sticking around is being in the community, staying in the community, shopping in the community, working in the community, serving in the community. All of those are going to build community resilience. And it's got to be a multifaceted approach. Increase volunteerism, we've already talked about that. Increase the celebrations that we have in terms of participation, Roy Days, other things. We've seen some that are dropped away that really could be housed and done completely at low cost to the city. But also strategically develop codes and areas and development where we can have people buy their first home in Roy and build their second home in Roy and move up the ladder. Increase the homeownership aspect in Roy. Do what we can to increase that. Moderate zoning where we have high and medium density things to contribute to that.
Okay, we start with Janelle. Diane. Well, what kind of ideas do you have about additional housing units to help you to meet the state requirement for density?
I believe that we need to depend on our developers, because of course they're the ones that are going to buy it. But part of that means wise zoning. We have to balance the need and the desires of our residents, as well as focus and allow those that are owning the property to maximize their benefit. So I believe some of those changes have already been done. We have been increasing some of the zoning, but it still needs to be done with moderation. We need to focus the higher zones around the transit-oriented areas, and then we need to realize higher density lends itself to higher turnover, and we don't have the same, longevity with people. And 9 months is a normal turnaround for some of those apartment complexes. So part of that means community outreach. We need ideas for additional homes, but the most important thing is increasing the individual outreach so we can have success as a city and keep that community cohesiveness. So the steps are in place for the actual numbers, but we need to work on the extra.
So what we can do on all these, it goes back to proper zoning and proper planning. We have lots of areas of moderate and high income housing that are already in. We have the areas that are going to develop up. Let's face it, most of the development in Roy is going to happen up at this point. There's very little lateral room to go. So we have to strategically do that. And as Diane said, we have to very carefully look at that so we have people around the areas that we don't infringe on their rights. I think one of the biggest things we can do is in every consideration of any development that comes in, and we have to encourage that development and be excited about the developers coming in, is every single time ask, is this a rental or is this a property ownership? And do everything we can as a council to approve and encourage and push developers to do a ownership-oriented model, because owners are gonna stay in the community.
So I agree that we should be focusing higher density housing in the areas that are kind of made for that. For instance, over by the rail station and downtown, and in the other areas which don't have very much room anymore. We can do some of the townhomes and things that are more the size of normal houses. I know that we just had a developer come in that is doing townhomes, and they are about as big as my own home. And so people will be able to buy homes even when they're these lower income homes if they need to. But I think we need a variety of housing, and we do need to encourage home ownership. When we talk to developers, like they said, we can't force that. It's not legal to do so. We can't even ask that actually legally in a meeting, but we can let developers know that's what we're looking for in our city is home ownership and not a whole bunch of rentals.
What are your plans to attract more businesses to Roy?
Starting with me? Okay. Plans to attract businesses, Roy, that's been a question that was asked in the previous session, and there's no golden ticket to that. I think that's a multifaceted approach. I think it starts with very targeted recruitment. Council members and city employees very deliberately target businesses they know are shopping in the area or might be shopping in the area. Also, I think it goes back to design. Plan your 1900 corridor, which is our main business corridor. Think about form and function both. How is it going to draw? What's it going to look like in the community? Is it going to attract both businesses and patrons? Both are important. Support your local entrepreneurs. They're going to be the backbone of business in there. People that are already here and are wanting to start up things, especially in those home-based and remote businesses that do bring in revenue, but you don't see a storefront on. Increase your community outreach. Let them know what are the possibilities, what are the development opportunities, where is property open, what kind of things do we need?
So I already covered some of this. Like I said, I want to focus on the local businesses we already have and strengthen them so that they can in turn talk to their business friends and tell them how great Roy is. We do need to clean up our business areas, like I mentioned before. I believe that the better something looks, the more people want to shop there and the more people want to be there. I also believe that hopefully when all of our construction is done, that will also help. That'll be really nice. So we also need to be focusing on the infrastructure that is around our businesses so that, people can get there easily. And I think we can also use the general plan as a guide. I know a lot of people don't know about the general plan. I'll put it on my website so people can find it, but there was a lot of public input put into that. And I think that using that general plan as a guide would be great.
Attracting business certainly has many difficulties, and certainly Janelle and Tony have discussed a lot of those. I'd like to focus on what has been done because we have been working towards this. Some of that does entail zoning changes, and some of those are difficult, but some of those do need to be done. And so we're in the process of seeing some interest because of those. Housetops is very important, but what they call for the rooftops and the houses is the median wage. And so we need to be able to hopefully attract people and businesses that will allow us to have a higher median wage, because that will increase and change the economic businesses that come in. Home businesses are very important. We forget how important an individual home business is. And if we can help with regulations, decrease some of that government overreach, allow those people to be very successful, that infrastructure will help on on all fronts if we can do that. And phone calls, individual phone calls, sometimes just making a phone call. We have staff now that are helping with that as well, but individuals can do it too.
The complex has been pro, con, all, back and forth for years. What is your stance on keeping that the way it is and funding it?
I think it's me, right? Okay. So I enjoy the complex. Our family has a pass to the complex. In the mornings when I go, it is very full. The classes are, I know they have I mentioned last time they have the women's strength training, which is typically full of older people, but they could probably beat all of y'all in a wrestling match or something, because they're pretty strong. So I think it brings a lot of, unity to our community and a lot of resources. And I think that there are things we can do to make it better. We just spent a lot of money on it. I don't know, some people have suggested selling it. I really don't know who we would sell it to or how we would make our money back at all. So I think it would be in our best interest to come up with ways to make it more profitable. And I think that we'll see where that's standing pretty soon, because it's been about a year since it reopened. So that's what I'm hoping for.
The complex definitely does have a dichotomy of opinions there. And it was a tough decision. I was in the middle of that. In fact, initially, I probably would maybe not have supported it. But as I discovered and researched and realized the important cost savings that it did, it decreased, when you look at cities with this, it decreases police and fire needs. Long-term residents have paid for this for decades, and now they want to enjoy the fruits of their labor. There was a high public outcry for this to continue. So I believe we need to respect what the citizens have done. They have paid for this for a long time. We have been we made the repairs, we're making some great advancements, increased fees. And one of the important things is already our revenue is up 125,000. We need to continue increasing that. Revenue neutral goal is our plan, and there are other plans proposed, as already mentioned, in trying to increase public and partnership with this. Increasing our special events has already been done. Increased programming has been helping. I think we have a great start.
So the complex is actually a conversation I've had with a lot of people and had a lot of great strong feelings. And like both these great women here, I've enjoyed the complex. My wife goes there almost every day. My kids all had swimming lessons there. I have a core belief that all optional services of government in general should be as self-sustaining and, as Diane put, net zero as possible. With that in mind, the complex operates at a deficit, but it's getting better. I think we can first and foremost try and make it even better. And that's two things: increase usership. It's got to be the primary way. It's underutilized, particularly during the middle of the day. Part of that is the deal that there's Roy High parking there, and I'm really familiar with that. And everybody doesn't have a place to go. But part of it is just marketing and making things available, making people know what's available there. Increase usership, increase user fees. But ultimately, if it's going to mean that we have to write a check for several $100,000 a year, we need to consider things.
Great. This question is about conflict of interest. If a vote was to come before you and there was a potential conflict of interest, how would you handle that?
The first thing would be to evaluate carefully what that vote entails. And I would certainly go to the city attorney and make sure that all of the statutes, city, state, federal, were regarded with that. I'd want to make sure that we didn't go over into the possibility of causing a concern. I think that's the most important thing. But it's more important to know what the rules are. And sometimes conflict of interest can be actually increased by misinformation. And so if we have good information of what's going on, then that helps us. And when we have proper ethics, and if you have a plan right from the beginning that this is the way you're going to proceed when you have votes this way, then you're prepared and you don't have to worry about some of those ethical dilemmas, because you've made a plan ahead of time, and you don't even have to worry about what the consequences will be, because you've prepared and you have avoided and prevented some of those problems.
I appreciate Diane's response. She said everything I was thinking of. I think preparing and educating yourself. Every time we go to a city council meeting, I appreciate, and I've said this, Dan, the level of preparation that I see Representative Wilson or Diane putting into that meeting. I see hours and hours of preparation. And that's what has to go in. If there's going to be the possibility of a conflict of interest, it starts by acknowledging that. And then it would start by communicating to the city attorney. He's the one that can give me legal fees. I'm a math teacher. I'm not a legal specialist. So I would go there. And ultimately, as I educated myself, I would either need to relieve myself of that conflict, but if it ultimately came back that there was a clear conflict, I think you have to abstain and just say, I can't vote of this because of this conflict, and make very public why.
I agree with everything both of them said. I do want to use an example. So I'm on the planning commission, and when the agenda comes out, you're not supposed to talk to the council about it for influence wise, and you're not supposed to talk to a certain, like if the developer came and talked to you, then you would have to disclose that. And so I did once have a council member mention some things to me, and I had to, and I was like, oh, I can't talk about this. And so later I didn't end up having to vote because I wasn't an alternative voter at the time. And so I didn't have to vote, but I did disclose that to the planner, the city planner, so he could advise me on what I was supposed to do if I did have to go up, how I would address that. So I do think that that's important. And I think that, you know, if you have family or it's your land or anything's involved that you're voting on, then you should let people know.
I'm gonna repeat this one because it's good. When questions about expanding the city government programs, what would guide you to approve or not approve those programs and services? Tony.
I'm grateful you asked this question. I actually thought about it when I was sitting up there. One of my core principles is government should not be expanded. Minimal government. I think the less government intrudes in my life, the better I am. There are always going to be things perhaps that government has to do and might have a reason to expand. My first consideration would be, is it a critical service? Roy City is obligated by law and by morality to provide public service and basic infrastructure. If it's an expansion or a solidification of those services, it has to take into very serious consideration. Outside of that, most other things are optional. They're nice things. They make the community a wonderful place to live. They draw people into that. Other things to consider. It can't be done in a way where they're self-sufficient. If it can, then great, check it off. Are the benefits better than the expenses?
I think if I were to add or increase services or things in our community, some of the things I would look at, especially right now, is what is the cost? Because we obviously have a problem with revenue right now, so we can't be adding things that we can't afford. Also, are we working with other organizations? Does the city have to take on the responsibility of this, or is this just a collaboration that won't cost the city money, but we can be involved and support? And then also, what value is it bringing? Like Tony said, I wouldn't just expand things for the heck of it. I don't think that that's wise. I think that we need to look at the value of it and what the point of it really is.
I absolutely agree with Tony's. First of all, I would ask, is this the responsibility of a city? The city has certain specific responsibilities, and we need to try to be very careful that we don't get into other venues. You know, the complex is kind of a little bit on the border of that. One of the things about the complex, it does provide a service for a niche of people that we don't have outside private services for the teenagers, for some of the elderly. Still, it's a little bit of a difficult one there, but that's the key. Is it a responsibility of the city? We have many good ideas. We have people that come and ask for programs to be expanded or for money donations. But the number one thing, even though they may be very good programs, is it our responsibility to finance that? Is it our responsibility to fund that? We need to know where that fits in for the line. And I think part of that is if we're going to be involved, and we want to be involved as council members, sometimes we need to pay for that ourselves. It's not necessarily a program that needs to be expended from taxpayer.
Talking about spending money and budgeting and et cetera, we're starting with Janelle, right? What are your feelings on any kind of combined services with other cities?
First, I know that Roy has looked into that, like, for instance, doing fire with Riverdale and North Ogden, and what the cost would be. I know they've looked at, what if we joined the fire district, what would that cost taxpayers, things like that. And so I think that I'm open to all of those things. I think you have to look at the cost and what the residents want, and it all comes down to, like has been mentioned before, what are residents willing to pay for? Do we want to have our own services, or do we want to be sharing those services with other communities? And that does have its pros and cons for every decision you make. So I think that's a decision you have to make at the time once you have all the data to back that all up.
That has definitely been investigated because of the revenue issues we've had. Some people have actually purported that we should have Riverdale and Roy join as cities because they have more commercial and we have more of the homes, rooftops. But when we talk about the exact thing Janelle was saying in regards to the fire department, interestingly enough, we were going to have 3 cities join together. Roy citizens would have paid 45% more to have that fire service be combined. And what's interesting about that is they would never see it on property taxes because it would come through differently. It would come through as a fire department on your property tax. So a lot of people say, well, this city doesn't have, they have a lower tax increase, or for example, South Ogden is more or less. But a lot of that is because their expenses come through a different line item on the property taxes because they go through the sheriff's department or for the fire department. And so combined city services are great, but we need to look at it realistically. What do we really save, or what are we really actually, oftentimes the ones we've looked at so far, we would pay more.
So combined city services, I think we've seen the goods and bads of that as we look down south in our Salt Lake County with the debacles that have worked out with unified police and unified fire down there. There are some successes, there are some dismal failures in there. It would really have to boil down to a pluses and minuses. And right now, at this point in our city, it would primarily come down to a cost issue. Right now, I believe our fire and our police are providing an exemplary service. And I think that given the resources, they can continue that. And we should expect that. They're excited to do that. If combining the services with another city decreased that service, that would be almost an axe in my mind. We can work out the expenses. If it increases the expenses, it's a motish in my mind. I think a better avenue is to combine specific tasks. For example, the fire chief has talked about using this new training facility and actually generating money from operations.
What would you say is Roy's biggest asset?
No doubt about it, is the community feel. We have a community cohesion and loyalty here that is very hard to find in other cities. And I've had an opportunity to participate, live in, talk with other people. And I said it once before, that Roy Boy feel is certainly here. And I don't know if you say Roy Boyle, if you're a girl, but it's a really important thing that we have. And so part of the programs that we have, Roy Days, the complex, they all join to that. And so we have to decide, those do cost money. Is it worth it? Because there is no way we can actually put a dollar amount on that community cohesiveness and that community feel and that vitality that we have, that energizing. But boy, when you look at other cities that don't have it, you can see some of the deficits. You can see where some of those problems are. Roy has great potential. And if we can just take the people that are coming in, maybe if they'll be more temporary, they're coming in as renters, and get them involved and not be so transient, that will definitely increase that very positive factor that we have.
I'm gonna second that, the people that live here in Roy. The biggest asset we have in Roy is a core group. Not everyone, we have people that are coming in and out all the time, but there's a core group of Roy. How many of us know people that have been Roy for multiple generations? And that spirit of community needs to be solidified. And I definitely agree with Diane here. The complex, Roy Days, our celebrations, they all come into that. But I think we can even magnify that asset even more. Incorporate better community things. Increase volunteerism in Roy Days. Implement highlights of Roy. What's the best places for Roy? Encourage, like Representative Skadner said earlier, if everybody in Roy ate one more meal out in Roy as opposed to going to River or Clinton, think of what money that could generate in just some sales tax revenue. There are little things we can do that would serve the dual purposes of increasing revenue, but also increasing community spirit.
Well, I feel bad going last because that's exactly what I would say. I would say the people in the community feel, that's one way, well, that's one reason that I felt so at home here is because I did grow up in a very small Idaho town, and this town has had a lot of that feel here in Roy as well, and I've been proud to raise my children here because of that. I do think that some ways that we could help people moving in, like you said, get people involved that just move in. You know, I lived in Roy for a while and didn't even know we had a Roy complex. I lived and didn't even know we had an aquatic center. So, and I was probably here 4 or 5 years before I realized that. And so I think that, you know, we do need to reach out to new people better. And I know some people I talked to on the street the other day, they suggested that we have a new move-in packet for people so that they would know about all these things. And I think that we could have a better business directory so people know what businesses to support in Roy. I think there's a lot of little things that we could do to make it a lot better.
What are your plans on getting input from the residents, from the citizens in the city in decision making?
I can't remember.
Tony, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were starting with Diane. Increasing input from residents. I think we need to do a much better job with that. I think, like I said in my open comments, that's one of the primary issues. We have so many avenues, and I think we overly rely on things like Facebook and some social media, where we could set up some, we have direct mailers, of course, that costs money in theirs, but it was brought up in one of these last things that, what about going out in the community, meet people where they are, organizing neighborhood councils, or at least neighborhood representatives. How can we get input for them? We do not utilize the religious, civic, and just recreational community organizations that we have in the city. Imagine that we got all of our information to them and then they disseminated it to members. How powerful a tool will that be? I think that's where it has to start. Use what's already established and organized at a minimal cost or no cost to our city.
I think those are really great ideas, and I agree that getting information out to the citizens is vital. And I think that, you know, for instance, going back to the general plan that I said I would post so you guys can read through it, but it actually separates the community into neighborhoods. So for instance, I live in the Midland Farms neighborhood, which it's over by West Park. And we could take those communities and use those different neighborhoods to connect better with people. Like I said, have neighborhood watches and have neighborhood block parties that are supported by us as a council, and we'll go to those block parties and talk with people. And I think that all of the ideas that Anthony had were also great. I think we need to go to the people as much as possible because it is hard. There's so much information out there now on Facebook, on social media. You miss things all the time. I get hundreds of emails a day, it feels like, and so I don't get through all of them. So I do think we need to go to the people.
Well, but it's nice that I can go ahead and just kind of add on to it. In fact, that's how I met Janelle, is when I first started council that's always trying to get specific groups through the church area, so we have representatives. That's difficult, it's a little more challenging than I had hoped, but we certainly have personal phone calls. When you have personal interaction, it makes a very big difference. Town hall meetings are so important because that way we have interaction and people can come there as a group. Surveys are helpful, but they are very expensive generally. I think one of the most important things that we've got coming up is My Hometown. This allows volunteers to come together to meet each of us individually. And once we know our situations, our neighbor situations, we have a way of communicating better. And there are weekly classes that are associated with that. As soon as we start interacting individually, that's when we can disseminate information in a very positive way. And that's how we can increase the interaction and participation.
Okay. We start with Diane. Is that where we're at, or are we, Janelle?
I think we're at Janelle.
Yeah, I think
I
we're.
started the
Okay.
last one.
Yeah, okay, that goes away sometimes. How do you feel that Roy could make better use of IT, social media, anything that would appeal to the younger generation even more than the older?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of my forte. I do this all the time. I'm all over social media all the time, probably too much, my family probably thinks, so. So I think that the city has been making strides in this. I've noticed that they have been doing better at this, and I do think that we can use other avenues besides just, posting graphics and things. I think that we can do some videos. When there's events going on, we can do live things for that. I know that Instagram, for example, is more appealing to a younger audience, and so using that in better ways. I think that, I think it was mentioned by another candidate in the primary that, bringing in some interns to do things like that would be really beneficial. And I think that's a great idea. So I would fully support something like that as well.
I believe that as we proceed with that, social media is certainly one of those areas, and we need to look at the formats and the forums that they prefer, but we can't only do that. I think one of the really important things that we could actually magnify is we have a youth member from our high school that comes to the city council. If we could get their ideas and get their input, that's right there. As soon as we start using individual youth, then they are going to be able to augment the social media. If it comes just from the city, it's not going to happen. But if you have youth involved, that's where you're going to have the interaction and the attention. If we have volunteers in a younger age, that's going to make a difference as well. I believe that if we can take our newsletters, and right now they're being mailed, but if we can email them more often and make them more accessible, the newsletter, sometimes the problem with emails is you get a lot of junk and it gets difficult to do it. So if we can get people asking to have the emails for the newsletters and keep that important. So IT, I think, goes across many facets, but the key is the youth, as has been mentioned. And if we get them involved, it will be successful.
I'm going to echo some of these responses. I had to chuckle to myself. The very first thing I thought was, ask somebody 20 years younger than me to deal with it. I do Facebook, I do some other things. I don't do a lot of the Instagram things. It's just not my forte. But how many youth do we have working with? I work at Roy High every day. There's journalism classes. Why can we not create partnerships with already existing organizations and professions? Whether it's journalism courses at Weber State, they have a radio station up there. Journalism courses at the high school. Why can't we implement people that are already training and have that expertise? And maybe it's a minimal outreach, but how much would we have to pay a high school student or a college student to spend a few hours and set up an IT, a social media rich outreach program? And then always go back to the thing I said earlier. We do not utilize already existing religious, civic, and community organizations that are already here.
Oh, you can answer that.
What do you believe is an important key to success in efficient and effective fiscal management?
I think the very first thing is saving, because I think the most important thing is making sure you have a good base foundation savings account, because you know there are going to be problems at one point in time. And if you don't have a good foundation, if you don't have a good rainy day fund, that's when you're going to start getting into trouble, because things pop up that you don't know. Fiscal management comes in being very careful in the services that you provide, and if that needs to be fine-tuned, it needs to be cut, that may have to go, but it's carefully analyzing the services that are provided. It's also being careful that you pay your employees properly. We lose so much money because we don't pay our staff. We have turnover. Right now, we've had oftentimes many positions at the fire department. 3 people have had the same position for 3 different years, $13,000 just to outfit them. That is like almost 1% tax increase. If we could have just kept that person there, we could have saved all that money. So sometimes we step over dollars to pick up pennies, and we need to stop that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, good fiscal management, I think it starts with a good plan and has short-term and long-term goals. What are our short-term plans for money? It's been brought up that maybe it would have been better rather than do a 28% increase, that gradually do a 1 to 2% every year. I think better than that is, well, a part of that, make cost revenues. What's our cost? What's our revenue? That's a more business aspect of code aspect. And the city should not be generating massive amounts of revenue. It's not the job of government, but we should be balancing our expenses with that. Part of that expenses, and Dan brought this up, we've lost literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in the last 10 years, last 5 years, due to retraining and retraining employees. That accounts to a 1 to 3 digit tax increase. No matter how you look at it. Planning, long-term planning, and very close collaboration with the administrative offices at the city. Keep in mind the general plan and the long-term goals.
So there's a couple things I would like to talk about in this. Fiscal management, obviously you need to be careful with your money and always mindful that you are using taxpayer money. But we also need to remember that, you know, sometimes we have to spend some money to make some money. So they talked about the training, that we've been wasting money by having to retrain people. We also, you know, I asked in one of my first meetings with one of the heads of departments, because I went and talked to all of them, I asked, you know, why don't we have more festivals and things here to bring in business, like people to our businesses? And they're like, we don't have the funding to do it. We don't have the manpower to do it. So because we've been so frugal, sometimes we've kind of cut off other options that we could have to make money in our community, and that's unfortunate. And I also think that I would advocate for the new council to work together to make a fiscal plan for the next 2 years.
I'm gonna ask this question again. Tell me a time when you have had an ethical dilemma and what you did.
Let's see, is that?
Wow. I'm trying to think of ethical dilemmas that I can share information about. Most of the ethical dilemmas I've had involve students and parents, but one of the general things I get all the time as a teacher, and this happens at the high school level where I teach, it happens at the community college where I teach in the evenings, happens at Utah State where I teach remotely, and Weber State where I teach remotely, and at Dixie where I have, is being asked to do things that go against a core principle of accountability and personal responsibility. And I think communication comes right back into it. The individuals that are going to be affected by that quote ethical dilemma, me, another individual, third parties, need to be very well aware of what the consequences are and where my lines are, what my core principles are. And beyond that, no more.
Well, if you know me, you know that I like to follow rules. And so anytime, you know, there's a law or a rule broken, I always feel very uncomfortable. And so anytime I've had to face anything like that, it's always an ethical dilemma to me. I try to always be honest about those things. And like I said, I used an example earlier that, someone had talked to me and I had to disclose that information. I've also remember a time when I was a manager of some apartments and I had a RA that was working for me and they weren't doing their job. And so I had to go talk to them, and it felt very difficult because I ended up having to fire the person, and I felt very terrible about it. And it felt wrong because I knew that she was going through difficult things, but I also knew in the long run, it would be better for me and for her if she was able to take time and do the things she needed. So that was difficult.
I think the first thing we need to do with that is educate ourselves, because oftentimes we don't even know what the rules and the laws are that we're trying to keep ourselves in response to the ethics. The most important thing is start with a personal accountability standard. And that standard means find out what the rules are, find out what the laws are. That way you can move forward with education and then take a look at the situation. Oftentimes, something looks like it's going to be an ethical dilemma initially, but there are ways to work around it. One of my most difficult ethical situations is when I work with patients that are minors. And parents do not have the legal right to know everything about minors. And it's usually the most difficult area, which is sexual and reproduction areas. The most important area that a patient or a parent wants to know. So what I need to do is I need to work around, I have to keep it in the rules, the standards, and the ethics, but maybe I can finally help that patient notify the parent themselves. Try to work at that from a different angle.
Okay, starting with Diane, right? Define what your definition of transparency is.
Transparency, I believe, means government operates openly. Being open is key because we need to have honesty, and it allows public easy access and understanding of the processes, information, and decision. We have a lot of laws that protect transparency, but again, if we know what those laws are, then we can even more fully fulfill what that transparency is. So for example, two of us on the city council can be together at certain functions, otherwise we can't be, because we're trying to promote and protect that transparency. We need to be able to be willing to talk to people individually about things, but whatever it is, remember, those things are saved. If we have emails, those emails are saved in case something needs to come up in regards to a grandma request. Transparency means openness, and it means to allow the public access to what happens in government.
Transparency in government, what we're talking about here, means to me, unless I have a legal and ethical obligation to keep it secret and concealed, and there are instances of that, but those are very few, then I have a moral and ethical obligation to make it public so that anyone can sit in front of me and watch it. And often, like Dan pointed out, that comes to learning, what do I have to protect? And there's very few of those, and everything else is out to open. Like Dan said, it's interesting that they really have to plan community events. They can't have the whole council show up to support some event because it's not publicly recorded. They have to have minimal peoples there. I've had conversations with the city manager, with council members, with the police chief, where they've come to a point where they say, I can't reveal that to you because if I did, it would violate this standard that I've had. So education is the first thing.
I agree. Education definitely is one of the most important factors so that you understand, especially by law, what you can divulge and what you cannot. But I think, like Anthony said, that if you can't divulge it, then you should if someone's asking a question. And I also believe that transparency is when someone's asking a question and I don't know the answer, then I honestly say I don't know and I'm going to go find out for you instead of just making up whatever you think they want to hear. And I think that about covers it.
Okay, last quick question. In one word, describe what you have or what is about you that would make Roy a better place. Tony, right?
one word. Teachability.
Okay. Jeanette,
I think diligence.
say that again.
Diligence.
Hardworking.
Okay, there you
That
go.
was two
Those are all
words.
good qualities.
I think it's
Okay,
combined.
We'll start with Janelle. You have a minute and a half to tell these people out there why you are the best candidate for this position.
Okay. Sorry, I have to get my notes. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for letting us come tonight and talk to everyone, and I appreciate all the citizens that came and the League of Women Voters and for all that you do. I think that I am a very good choice and the best choice for city council because I show up, I'm involved, I listen, I care deeply about the community. I've served on boards and councils and committees because I believe being part of things matters. I take the time to hear people's concerns and I'm willing to see issues from different points of view because I believe that the best solutions come when we work together. If I'm elected, I will work very hard for our city. I'll bring dedication, integrity, and a collaborative spirit to this role. My focus will always be on what strengthens Roy, safe neighborhoods, smart and responsible growth, careful use of taxpayer dollars, and building stronger connections across our community. I would be honored to earn your vote and your support. And to learn more, I would really like to invite all of you to come to look at my website. It's votejanelleholbert.com. And I'm also open to talking to anybody about anything. I am an open book. I love talking. My kids call me a yapper, so apparently I'm gifted at yapping. So come talk to me.
Diane.
I agree with Janelle. Thank you very much, Terry, League of Vote, and thank you very much for you for coming. This did chew up a big portion of your afternoon. I am very pleased to be working with these people even though, because I think the team and the energy that has come from these different forums is actually very energizing. And those that were here before, it's fun to see them involved in the city. You know, some of them now are on the planning commission. I think that's what we need to bring is that excitement and energy for our citizens. What sets me apart, I believe, is my past 4 years of dedicated experience. There is so much to learn, as I've mentioned. Currently, I'm serving as Mayor Pro Tem, which has been very educational as well. My number one focus is representing the citizens of Roy, and serving them well will continue to be my priority. And there are a lot of different viewpoints, and you have to balance those viewpoints because some of them are loud on each side. I will foster a team approach. I'm a team player, and that is so important. A team approach amongst council members, staff, as well as citizens. I also am personally very frugal, and I think that's an important part of it. Education of myself and citizens is important. Promoting volunteer interest is critical. We need to increase and continue our community cohesiveness. I'm committed to listening, researching. Collaboration is essential. And I want you to know I really thank you for your support and hope that you'll allow me that privilege because I would like to continue that.
I'll echo again, thank you for the league and for Terry for putting this together. It's a wonderful opportunity to consolidate your thoughts. I can listen, I can learn, I can make decisions with integrity. Here's what I mean by that. Listening is more than just being available. All of us are available. I want to be much more aggressive at gathering information. I've talked about how I'd like to engage already existing organizations, reach out to the community, whether that's in-person additional experiences or digital or virtual things. Reach out and gather information. I realize that I have a lot to learn. I think every council member that's ever has served or will serve will realize very quickly, as I do and have, that you know far little, you know, far less than you think. I can learn, I can work, I can show up. Some people have hobbies, I just work. I'll show up prepared every single time. I'll be there. I'll do what needs to be done. And when push comes to shove, I'll look at all the data streams, all the information I have, and I'll make a decision with the utmost integrity that benefits the people of Roy. The people of Roy come first. And in addition to that, I haven't been on the council. I bring a new point of view, something that hasn't been there before. trade-off experience for a new point of view, you get goods and bads. I, like these other ladies, are excited.
Okay, I want to thank these candidates as well. They also deserve a round of applause. And thank you all of you for coming. I hope we gave you some information that you didn't know or that you learned about the candidates. Feel free to chat with them for a minute. The library is closed at 9, and they will come and push you out. Okay, thanks so much and have a great night. Both.
Every time they ask, they say,
Okay, because I heard that, I'm like, wait a second, that's in my, now,
well,
what about
I guess it's not, what it is you cannot take that.
yeah, okay. Now, what about the council? Do they have that same limit?
How do you think she did? Did she do great? I think she did, yeah.
Well, they also have that same thing because they can't even consider being biased.
Okay.
So like, if you
Because I-
bias towards renters.
Yeah, because you've seen them more than I have, I'm sure, because it comes up all the time.
Yes, and
Now,
people bring it up all the time because they want to know.
No, but if it's, no, but if it's presented in their own paper, some of them
Right,
intentionally
yes, so
put
if
in there,
they
then you
tell
can
us,
bring it up.
yes, but we can't really ask her, but they can say.
Verify, it
Well,
says
we're
here,
not supposed to look at last time, and then they get corrected all the time.
yeah, well, at least now it would be okay to verify it's right here. I don't know.
Oh,
You too, thanks so much.
thank you, Lexi. Oh, thanks, sorry, I'm all-
Let me give you, with,
Thank you.
Oh, gosh.
like, I believe that but I think that's something I'm excited about is I see a good relationship.
What's the reason? Ask her.
That is a position, and that becomes a 2-year appointment. And I position myself so I think that's a prime, I think that's a prime position for any one of us to fulfill. That's a logic. Who knows? Oh, yeah, there's a lot of other people.
But the great thing that I've even found.
Let me put this back.
I love to have a lot of.